North Korea is still willing to meet with the U.S. even after President Trump called off his planned meeting with leader Kim Jong Un on Thursday. North Korea's Foreign Affairs Minister said in a statement, quote, "We have the intent to sit with the U.S. at any time." Here's some of what President Trump said Friday.
We're going to see what happens. We're talking to them now. It was a very nice statement they put out. We'll see what happens. No, we'll see what happens. It could even be the 12th. We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens.
And Major Garrett joins me now from the White House. Major, you've said President Trump's letter to Kim Jong Un Thursday was more of a postponement of the summit rather than a cancellation. Is it feasible the meeting could still happen on June 12th?
It's possible, but the window for that possibility shrinks literally by the hour. The White House is at this moment, meaning Friday, deciding whether or not to send a logistics team to Singapore for this June 12th summit. It will only send that team once it, or if it obtains, ironclad assurances from North Korea that it will send its representatives for that meeting as well. The North Koreans skipped out at one planned for last week. To put it mildly, the White House does not want to be stood up and embarrassed a second time. That was actually a very early sign from the North Koreans that it might not be really serious about this June 12th summit. But the administration spent all of last week continuing to pursue options, came to the conclusion it wasn't going to work out. So it is theoretically possible that June 12th could be resurrected as a summit date, but literally by the hour, that prospect becomes dimmer and dimmer. And the fact is, though the North Koreans, in the president's words, put out a nice statement, quote unquote, it did not do what it did before, which is say that any goal of a summit would be denuclearization, meaning it, at some pace and through some verification mechanism, would give up its nuclear weapons. Absent that kind of declaration, it's very hard to see how this administration would put the summit back on the schedule.
Right. And Major, as you said, the North had gone silent prior to President Trump canceling the summit and failed to meet a U.S. advance team in Singapore. Here's what the president had to say about whether the North was playing games.
John, everybody plays games. You know that. You know that better than anybody.
What should we take away from that comment? Is this all sort of just the art of the deal machinations?
Well, look, there is an aspect of it. And look, the president and those around him say today, as they did yesterday, well, we walked away because that's what the president has always said. If you're not satisfied with the trajectory of either a negotiation or, in this case, a pre-negotiation, or maybe it should be said pre-negotiation, then you walk away and you let the other side know that you have that capability and that willingness, and are, in this case, willing to do it on the biggest stage imaginable, and maybe take some hits or criticism, editorial page and otherwise, about your credibility or your overall long-term strategy. This White House and this president is more than willing to take those knocks if it believes it's conveying an important message in the context of anything that is being discussed. All of this is brand new, every aspect of it. There's never been an attempt by a president of the United States to have direct communications with the North Korean dictator, ever. There have been low-level and mid-level and ministerial communications before, but never at this high level. And so that is one of the historic aspects of all of this, and it's sort of playing out on a grand public stage. And to put things back on schedule, the North Koreans are going to have to do more than just put out polite statements. Both sides have used some slightly aggressive terminology, but in the main have tried to keep things conciliatory. In the last 24 hours, that's a positive sign, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said on Thursday additional sanctions on North Korea could be coming, even though it was the U.S. who backed out of the summit. So how do these recent developments affect how other nations view the United States?
Well, it will be important to see what the international reaction is if, in fact, the June 12th summit is canceled, and canceled for sure. It's canceled now, but there's this small opportunity it could be revived. If it's not, and there's no future date that fills that diplomatic vacuum, then the United States will say that the United Nations Security Council sanctions and resolutions must be kept in full force. A lot of that falls on the obligations of the Chinese. And there's some sense here at the White House, and the administration has said this in the last couple of days, both publicly and a little bit more forcefully privately, that there's some slacking off on the Chinese part about full implementation and the rigor with which the Chinese are applying those economic sanctions to the North. And one aspect of all of this, quite apart from whether or not there's a summit date or not, is how tight the economic noose is on the North Koreans. The tighter it is, the more this administration believes it will negotiate in good faith. And if the Chinese are not applying maximum economic pressure, that gives North Korea space to operate and space to perhaps back away from denuclearization. That's the other dimension of all this. It's not just international decision-making or international appraisal of how effective or ineffective the Trump administration is. It's largely how willing is China to keep the economic pressure on North Korea. And any reduction in that pressure makes U.S. goals a bit harder to achieve.
Yeah, it seems like China has become a third player in this summit.
Certainly not. I would say not a third player, but a always co-player. That you can't really achieve anything if you're the United States government, or you can't achieve nearly as much as you would like without the active diplomatic and economic cooperation of the Chinese government.
Major Garrett at the White House, thank you.